All he wanted was to pick the perfect wedding cake, but an unexpected reunion turned that sweet moment into the beginning of the biggest turning point of his life. If you like stories like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We post new stories every day. Now, back to our story. The light May rain covered New York City in a gray mist that fogged the windows of the midtown skyscrapers. Ryan Miller adjusted the cuff of his Italian dress shirt as he watched the traffic on 6th Avenue through the armored glass of the Mercedes. At 42, every detail of his appearance was as calculated as a business transaction. The graying hair at his temples gave him an air of distinction without betraying his age. His navy blue suit cost more than what most Americans make in a year, and his Swiss watch marked not just the time, but his position in the social hierarchy of a metropolis that showed no mercy for weakness. "We're here, Mr. Miller." The driver's voice brought him back to the present. Ahead, Sweet Memories Bakery stood out from the urban landscape like a small pocket of resistance to modernity. The pastel-painted facade, the flower boxes in the windows, and the handcrafted sign contrasted sharply with the commercial buildings surrounding it. It was exactly the kind of place Jessica had chosen for their engagement cake. Something authentic, you know, not one of those big commercial bakeries. We want something that tells a story. His fiancée's words echoed in his mind with the strategic precision she applied to everything in her life. Jessica Hayes was waiting on the sidewalk, impeccable even under the persistent drizzle. A partner at one of the most influential law firms in the city, she had mastered the art of turning any environment into an extension of her office. The black leather coat, the designer briefcase, and her erect posture communicated authority before she even opened her mouth. She was exactly the kind of woman who fit into his world, his plans, the life he had built brick by brick over 2 decades of obsessive work. "Sorry I'm late." Ryan kissed her cheek with the formality that characterized even their most intimate moments. The meeting with the American investors ran long. "I figured, but now it's just the two of us and decisions about our future." Jessica smiled with that expression he knew so well, control disguised as spontaneity. "I already spoke with the owner. She's reserved an exclusive tasting for us." They entered the bakery like two executives inspecting an acquisition. The atmosphere enveloped them with the aromas of vanilla, chocolate, and freshly brewed coffee. The walls were decorated with old photographs of New York City, shelves filled with jars of artisanal jam, and framed, handwritten recipes that seemed to have been passed down through generations. It was almost theatrical in its nostalgia, Ryan thought, almost too performative. A young employee greeted them with professional smiles and led them to a table in the back, where cake samples were arranged like small works of art. Ryan observed every detail with the analytical eye he applied to his business deals. The quality was undeniable, but there was something else, something he couldn't quite define, a nagging sense of familiarity. "The chocolate raspberry cake is our specialty," the employee explained, serving them small portions. "It's the owner's recipe. She developed it with sentimental memories in mind, you know? Every flavor tells a story." Jessica was taking notes on her tablet with the same seriousness she dedicated to multi-million-dollar contracts. "And your delivery. Deadlines? We have 300 confirmed guests. The owner, Sarah, can clarify all the details. She'll be right out." Ryan brought a piece of the cake to his mouth and froze. The taste hit him like a physical memory, unearthing sensations he had buried years ago. Dark chocolate balanced with the subtle tartness of raspberry, a texture that melted on the tongue, releasing layers of flavor that revealed themselves slowly. It was impossible. It was exactly like... The back door opened. Time didn't stop. That would be too melodramatic for the raw reality that settled in that moment. Time simply lost its relevance. Sarah Davis emerged from the kitchen with a flour-dusted apron, her brown hair tied in a messy bun, and those green eyes he knew better than his own. 5 years hadn't erased a single nuance from her face, only added a maturity that made her even more disturbingly beautiful. She saw him and stopped in her tracks, the tray of new samples trembling imperceptibly in her hands. The recognition was mutual, instantaneous, devastating. Sarah. Her name escaped his lips like an involuntary confession. Ryan. Her voice remained composed, but he knew every inflection, every hesitation. He knew when. She was fighting to maintain control. Jessica looked up from her tablet, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. "Do you two know each other?" The question hung in the air like toxic smoke. Sarah approached the table with measured steps, professional even in the way she placed the tray on the wooden tabletop. "Ryan and I go way back, an old business partnership." The lie was technically true and completely false at the same time. Ryan admired her precision in finding words that didn't betray the past but also didn't deny its existence. Small world. Jessica refocused on the samples, clearly uninterested in old stories. "These flavors are extraordinary. Is there something special about your technique?" Sarah focused on the fiancé with the attention she would give any important client, but Ryan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands moved a little faster than necessary. "I work with select ingredients and recipes I've developed over the years. Each cake is designed to create an emotional experience, not just a culinary one." Interesting business concept. Jessica chewed the Sicilian lemon cake while analyzing the numbers Sarah had presented. "And your production capacity for large events?" While the two women discussed logistics and deadlines, Ryan got lost watching Sarah. She had changed in ways that took him a moment to fully process. Her body was the same, but there was a new firmness in her gestures, an authority he had never seen before. At 35, she emanated a confidence that stood in stark contrast to the 30-year-old he had known. That Sarah had depended on his approval, sought his validation in every decision, molded herself to his desires, like clay in a sculptor's hands. This Sarah didn't need anyone. "Mommy," a child's voice cut through the conversation, like a blade. "Can I show you the picture I drew?" From the back of the bakery, a boy of about 4 came running, his dark hair disheveled and a smile that lit up his face as he waved a piece of paper. He ran directly to Sarah, who lifted him into her arms with absolute ease. Ryan felt the floor disappear from under his feet. The boy had his eyes, not a vague resemblance that the mind seeks in moments of vulnerability, an unmistakable identity that hit him like a punch to the gut. The same brown eyes with flecks of gold, the same shape of the chin, even that small dimple on the right side of his mouth that appeared when he smiled. "Leo, sweetie, Mommy's working right now." Sarah kissed the boy's forehead with genuine tenderness. "Why don't you go back to Aunt Carol? She's helping you with your homework." "But I want to show you," Leo insisted, with a determination Ryan recognized from his own childhood. "I drew our house with a garden. It's beautiful, my love. We'll talk about it in a little bit, okay?" Sarah set him down and whispered something in his ear that made him laugh before he ran back to the rear of the shop. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica had stopped taking notes and was watching Ryan with growing curiosity. Sarah kept her gaze fixed on the table, her hands clasped over her apron, as if bracing for an imminent blow. "What a cute son," Jessica commented with automatic politeness. "How old is he?" 4.5. Sarah's answer came out faster than it should have for a casual question. Ryan did the mental math he didn't want to do. 4.5 years. They had broken up 5 years ago. The dates aligned with cruel mathematical precision. "His father?" Jessica started to ask, but Sarah cut her off. "It's just me and him." The firmness in her voice left no room for more questions. "We're a small but complete family." Ryan was fighting a feeling of suffocation that had nothing to do with the physical space of the bakery. Memories began to surface without his permission. The last fight, the accusations, the words he could never take back. Sarah trying to explain something he had refused to hear, consumed by his own pain and wounded pride. The door slamming, the silence that followed and lasted 5 years. What if she had tried to tell him about the pregnancy? What if he had chosen not to listen? "I think we have enough information to make a decision," Jessica said, closing her tablet efficiently. "We'll be in touch in the next few days with our final choice. Thank you for your time, Sarah." Sarah nodded professionally, but her eyes met Ryan's for a brief moment. There was pain there, old, tired pain, like a wound that had healed poorly, but still ached when the weather changed. "It was Good to see you again, Ryan. The words were formal but loaded with meanings only they understood. I hope you'll be very happy. They stood up to leave, Jessica already discussing other vendor options as they walked to the door. Ryan turned back one last time and saw Sarah watching them from the window, the boy, Leo, in her arms again, the two of them waving politely at the departing customers. In the car, Jessica immediately began to analyze the experience like a legal case. The quality is unquestionable, but there's something strange about that dynamic. Did you two date? A long time ago. Ryan kept his voice neutral. It ended badly. I can imagine. She clearly still has feelings. That could complicate our business relationship. Jessica typed notes on her phone without looking at him. Maybe we should choose another bakery. Ryan didn't answer. He was too busy trying to understand how he had lived for 5 years without knowing he had a son, how he had built an entire life on the foundation of a lie he had told himself, how that boy with golden-flecked eyes had grown up without him, learned to walk, to talk, to draw houses with gardens without him ever knowing of his existence. The rain had stopped, but New York City was still grey. In the rearview mirror, he caught one last glimpse of Sweet Memories Bakery shrinking in the distance, carrying with it secrets he was only just beginning to comprehend. Jessica kept talking about logistics and alternative vendors, but Ryan couldn't focus on her words. His mind was stuck on that moment when Leo smiled, revealing a dimple that was like looking at himself through a mirror in time. For the first time in 2 decades, Ryan Miller had no idea what to do next, and that uncertainty scared him more than any financial crisis he had ever faced. 3 nights had passed since the encounter at the bakery, but Ryan couldn't erase that image from his memory. Leo running through the shop, his golden-flecked eyes shining with joy, the dimple forming when he smiled. It was like watching a version of himself that never had the chance to be, spontaneous, innocent, unconditionally loved. Jessica had chosen another bakery. It's more practical, she had explained during their Thursday night dinner at Daniel, and there are no emotional complications involved. She chewed her mushroom risotto. With the same precision she applied to her legal briefs, each movement calculated for maximum efficiency. You seem distant lately. Problems at work? Nothing I can't handle. The answer was automatic, but Ryan knew he was lying. No board meeting, corporate merger, or financial crisis was keeping him awake until 3 in the morning. What consumed him was the relentless math of the dates and the growing certainty that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. That Friday, he cancelled all his meetings and drove to Greenwich Village. The bakery was on one of the neighborhood's tree-lined side streets, far from the commercial centers where he usually moved. It was a different New York from his own, more colorful, more human, where people walked slowly and greeted their neighbors by name. He parked on the corner and watched the activity through the tinted windows of his car. Sarah appeared and disappeared behind the display window, serving customers, arranging shelves, smiling with genuine hospitality at every person who entered her small empire of sugar and flour. At 3 in the afternoon, a middle-aged woman brought Leo by the hand. Ryan recognized her as the person Sarah had called Aunt Carol the other day. The boy ran into the bakery and dove into his mother's arms with absolute enthusiasm. Sarah lifted him up and spun him around, laughing in a way Ryan had never seen before, completely unguarded, radiant, whole. This is what true happiness looked like. The memories came without warning, as they always did when he let his guard down. Sarah at 30, fresh out of culinary school, her eyes shining with hope every time she talked about opening her own business. Imagine, Ryan, a place where people come not just to eat but to feel at home, where every recipe tells a story, where every cake is made with real love. He had thought her dreams were too small. Why settle for a neighborhood bakery when she could work in the best restaurants in the city? Why limit herself to homemade sweets when the gourmet market offered infinitely greater opportunities? Ryan didn't understand that. For Sarah, it wasn't about financial ambition, but something much deeper, the need to create, to nurture, to build human connections through food. You could be so much more than this, he used to say, thinking he was being generous. You have enough talent for much bigger achievements. Sarah would smile sadly and change the subject. She had learned that disagreeing with him was futile, that questioning his worldview resulted in lectures on pragmatism and market realities. Little by little, she kept her dreams to herself, sharing them only with the notebook where she jotted down recipes and projects she never showed him. The relationship had lasted 3 years. 3 years of Sarah trying to mold herself into what he expected of her, while he tried to mold her into what he considered her potential. It was a toxic dynamic disguised as a partnership where love was confused with possession and control was masked as protection. The breakup happened on a rainy Tuesday in May, exactly 5 years ago. Ryan came home to find Sarah crying in the kitchen, an open cardboard box on the table, filled with notebooks, handwritten recipes and small personal items. "I need some time," she said without looking at him. "A few weeks to think, to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be who you want me to be." His reaction was explosive. How dare she question him? How dare she suggest he was controlling, manipulative, limiting? All his insecurities emerged disguised as righteous anger. She was being ungrateful, dramatic, immature. She was throwing away a perfect relationship for some teenage whim. "If that's what you want, then just leave," he yelled. "I'm not going to beg anyone to stay." Sarah tried to explain that she wasn't breaking up with him, just asking for space to breathe, but the wound to his pride was already open, bleeding arrogance and fear of abandonment. He couldn't hear beyond his own pain. "Ryan, please, just listen to me," she began. "There's nothing to listen to. If you want to, go then go, but don't come back later saying I didn't warn you." The words came out with calculated cruelty, designed to inflict maximum damage. Sarah picked up the box and walked to the door. On the threshold, she turned one last time, her face wet with tears, trying to gather the courage for something important. "Ryan, just go." He turned his back, pretending to busy himself with work papers. "I don't have time for drama." The door closed. For weeks, he waited for her to come back. He waited for the phone call, the text message, the humble return asking for forgiveness. His arrogance prevented him from making the first move, from admitting that maybe he had overreacted. Pride was a luxury he had always allowed himself. When he finally tried to contact her, 2 months later, her phone number had been changed. The apartment she shared with a friend was empty. Their mutual friends said she had moved out of the city, but no one knew exactly where. Ryan convinced himself it was for the best. Complicated relationships didn't fit with his plans for business expansion. There were contracts to close, companies to acquire, a financial empire to build. Sarah and her small dreams were a closed chapter of his youth. Now, watching her through the bakery window, he understood that he had been a complete fool. She hadn't given up on her dreams. She had achieved all of them, on her own, without help, without support, turning pain into purpose. Sweet memories. Bakery was exactly what she had always wanted to create. A space where people felt at home, where every recipe told a story, where love was the main ingredient. And there was something more. Something he was only just beginning to accept. Leo ran out of the bakery and tripped on the sidewalk, scraping his knee. The immediate cry echoed down the quiet street. Sarah appeared in seconds, knelt beside him, and kissed the scrape before cleaning it with infinite care. The way she spoke to him, calmed him, turned a small accident into an opportunity to show unconditional love. Ryan knew that tenderness. He had been on the receiving end of it for 3 years, without ever being able to properly return it. His phone vibrated on the passenger seat. Jessica had sent the final list of arrangements for the wedding, scheduled for 2 months from now. Vendors confirmed, church reserved, honeymoon planned, everything organized with military precision. But he couldn't stop thinking about the last conversation he'd had with Sarah 5 years ago. The desperate way she had tried to tell him something important, and how he had refused to listen. "Ryan, What had she been trying to tell him in that moment? The answer hit him like a painful and obvious revelation. Sarah was pregnant. She was trying to share the most important news of their lives with him, and he had chosen to turn his back, literally and metaphorically. For 5 years, she had single-handedly raised a child he didn't even know existed. For 5 years, Leo had grown up without a father, while he built a life based on the lie that he had made the right decision. The phone rang. Jessica. Hey, honey. I just confirmed the wedding menu. I went with the smoked salmon canapés instead of the cod. It's more sophisticated. Her voice came through clearly on speakerphone. Are you listening to me? I'm listening. You sound distant again. Are you sure everything's okay? Ryan looked one more time at the bakery. Sarah had sat Leo on a high stool behind the counter and given him a piece of paper and some colored pencils. The boy was drawing with intense concentration, his tongue sticking out slightly, just as Ryan himself did as a child, during tasks that required special attention. Jessica, he said slowly, I need to call off the wedding. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. What do you mean, call it off? Ryan, we have 250 confirmed guests, $4,000 spent on invitations alone, not to mention, I'll reimburse all the costs, but I can't get married. You're having a pre-wedding panic attack. It's normal. Let's talk in person, calmly. It's not panic, Jessica. I found out I have a son. The silence was now charged with dangerous electricity. What? Her voice lost all its professional composure. What do you mean you have a son? Where did this come from? The woman from the bakery, Sarah. We dated 5 years ago, and when we broke up, she was pregnant. She tried to tell me, but I wouldn't let her. That's ridiculous, Ryan. You don't even know if the child is yours. It could be. A setup, a scam. It happens all the time to successful men. The suggestion made him nauseous. It's not a scam, Jessica. You just have to look at him. Then get a DNA test and be done with it. Settle the legal issue, set up a proper child support agreement, and we move on with our lives. It's no reason to cancel our wedding. Ryan hung up the phone without responding. Sarah was now at the door of the bakery, sweeping the sidewalk, while Leo played with a toy car at her feet. She was humming softly, a melody he vaguely recognized. Leo looked up and laughed at something she said, running to hug her legs with all his might. It was a scene of brutal simplicity, mother and son complete in each other, creating happiness from everyday moments. It was the absolute opposite of the life he had built, where every gesture was measured, every emotion calculated, every relationship based on strategic convenience. Ryan got out of the car. Sarah saw him approaching and instinctively placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. She whispered something to the boy, who immediately obeyed and ran inside the bakery. Hi, Sarah. Ryan. She continued sweeping, avoiding his gaze. Did you forget something at the bakery? I need to talk to you. About what? The cake? Jessica already called to let me know you chose another vendor. About Leo. Sarah stopped sweeping. We have nothing to talk about regarding my son. Her voice had a firmness he had never heard before. He's doing just fine, thank you. He's my son too, isn't he? The silence stretched for so long that Ryan began to doubt his own courage to keep the question hanging in the air. Finally, Sarah looked up and met his gaze with an honesty that completely disarmed him. Yes, she said simply, he's your son. The confirmation hit him like a gunshot, even though he knew it was inevitable. Hearing it from Sarah made it real in a way his mind was still processing. Why did you never try to find me? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. I did, Ryan. I tried to tell you that night, when you threw me out. I came back the next week, the next month. Your secretary had instructions not to put me through. Your security guards had orders not to let me up. He vaguely remembered giving those instructions. He had wanted Sarah to learn her lesson and stop dramatizing the end of their relationship. He thought she was being possessive, trying to force a reconciliation through persistence. I didn't know you were pregnant, because you didn't want to know. You were too busy proving to me that you'd made the right decision. Sarah leaned on the broom, the exhaustion of 5 years showing in her eyes. After a few months of trying, I gave up. I decided it would be better to raise Leo away from someone who wasn't even interested in hearing what I had to say. His words came out quieter than he intended. I'm so sorry. I used to be too, for a long time. Sarah looked through the window, where Leo was drawing excitedly. But I'm not anymore. Leo turned me into the person I needed to be. He taught me to be strong, independent, to build my own life without depending on anyone's approval. We're happy, Ryan. Genuinely happy." Her happiness hurt him in an inexplicable way. Not because it was a bad thing, but because it showed him everything he had lost to pride and stupidity. "I want to know him," he said. "I want to be a part of his life." Sarah studied him carefully, as if weighing the risks of a very important decision. "Leo has never asked about his father. We've created our own version of a family, just the two of us. I don't want you coming into his life out of guilt or curiosity, only to leave again when you get tired of playing dad." The accusation was fair, and it hurt precisely because of that. "This isn't a game, Sarah. I've changed." "We all change." She picked up the broom and walked to the door. "If you really want to try, it'll be on my terms, at my pace, with my rules. Leo comes first, always. If you agree to that, we can start slow." Ryan nodded, knowing he had no right to negotiate terms. Sarah watched him for a few more seconds before going inside the bakery, leaving him alone on the sidewalk with the weight of 5 years of mistakes and the fragile possibility that maybe, someday, he could be forgiven. Not just by Sarah, mostly by Leo, mostly. And if he was very lucky, maybe even by himself. The first meeting took place on a Saturday morning in Central Park, neutral territory that Sarah had strategically chosen. Ryan arrived half an hour early, more nervous than he had ever been before a business meeting. He had spent the night awake, researching 4-year-old children on the internet, what they liked, how they behaved, what kind of toys were appropriate. He felt completely unprepared for a fatherhood that had arrived without an instruction manual. Sarah appeared pushing a small blue children's bike, with Leo running alongside wearing a helmet decorated with cartoon characters. The boy stopped when he saw Ryan, hiding partially behind his mother's leg with evident but cautious curiosity. "Leo, remember Mr. Miller? He came to play with us today." Sarah knelt down to be at her son's level. "Remember we talked about him yesterday?" The boy nodded shyly but didn't come closer. Ryan knelt on the grass, trying to reduce the height difference that made him too imposing a figure. "Hi, Leo. I really like your bike. What color is that?" he asked, feeling ridiculously formal talking to a child. "Blue." The answer came out softly, but Leo took a step forward. "It's new. Mommy bought it after I learned to ride without training wheels." "Really? You learned all by yourself?" Leo shook his head, proud. "Aunt Carol helped me. She ran behind me holding the bike, and then she let go and I kept riding without falling." Ryan felt a strange pang in his chest. He had missed that moment. He had missed so many moments he would never be able to get back. Sarah discreetly moved away, pretending to organize a backpack with snacks and toys, but keeping a watchful eye on their every move. Ryan realized he was being evaluated, tested on every gesture and word. "Want to ride your bike while I run alongside?" he offered, vaguely remembering reading that shared physical activities helped build bonds. Leo considered the proposal seriously. "Can you run? I'm pretty fast." "I can try to keep up." The smile that spread across Leo's face was like a punch to Ryan's gut. The dimple appeared exactly where he expected it, and for a moment it was like looking at himself at 4 years old, before life had taught him to control every expression. The next 2 hours were the most bewildering of Ryan's adult life. Leo chattered non-stop as he pedaled, about school, about the cartoons he watched, about the neighbor's cat that always escaped into the bakery's backyard. Ryan ran alongside, trying to process every piece of information, memorize every detail, learn who this boy was who carried his genes but had grown up in a completely different universe. "Mummy, can I show my drawing to Ryan?" Leo stopped his bike near a bench where Sarah was watching their interaction. "Of course, sweetie." Leo pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Ryan with evident pride. It was a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands in front of a small house with a smoking chimney and flowers in the garden. "That's me and Mommy at our new house," Leo explained. "When Mommy saves up enough money, we're going to live in a house with a yard so I can have a dog." Ryan studied the drawing with genuine attention. The figures were simple but expressive, made with the clear affection Leo had for everything related to his mother. The house looked like a child's dream, perfect, welcoming, full of details that indicated love and security. It's beautiful, Leo. You draw really well. Mommy taught me. She draws cakes before she makes them for real. Leo moved closer, his initial shyness dissolving. Do you know how to draw? Ryan realized he hadn't held a crayon since his own childhood. His adult life was made of digital presentations, printed contracts, and Excel spreadsheets. When was the last time he had created something with his own hands, just for the pleasure of it? I can't draw as well as you, he admitted. Maybe you can teach me someday. Leo seemed to consider the idea seriously. I can teach you, but first you have to practice a lot. The innocence of the response drew a genuine laugh from Ryan, the first spontaneous sound he had made in weeks. Sarah looked up from the book she was pretending to read, surprised by the naturalness of their interaction. When it was time to leave, Leo hugged Ryan with childlike ease. Can you come play again? If your mum lets me, I'd love to. Leo ran to Sarah. Mommy, can Ryan come again? He's nice, and he runs really fast. Sarah exchanged a look with Ryan. Not exactly friendly, but not hostile. It was progress. We'll see, sweetie. Now let's go home. You have homework to finish. On the way to the car, Ryan walked beside Sarah while Leo ran ahead with his bike. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For letting this happen. I know I have no right to ask for anything. Sarah stopped walking. You do have a right, Ryan. Even if it took you 5 years to exercise it, Leo is your son. I just don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to get hurt either. Then be consistent. If you're going to be in his life, be there for real. Children don't understand ambiguity. The conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Ryan's cell phone. Jessica. He declined the call, but the movement did not go unnoticed by Sarah. Your fiancé isn't happy about this situation, I imagine. Ryan hesitated. We're not engaged anymore. Sarah stopped completely. What? I called off the wedding after I found out about Leo. Ryan, her voice carried genuine concern. You can't just tear your life apart because of this. Leo and I are fine. You don't have to sacrifice yourself to be a good father. It's not a sacrifice. The truth is, I never should have let myself get to the altar with Jessica. Our relationship was convenient, but it wasn't real. Sarah watched him attentively, as if trying to spot signs of a temporary emotional crisis. And now? What are you going to do? I don't know, Ryan admitted, and the honesty of the words surprised him. For the first time in 20 years, I don't have a 5-year strategic plan. I just know I want to be a part of Leo's life. Leo came running back to them. Mommy, I forgot to tell you forgot. Teacher said that next week is Father's Day at school, and every kid is going to introduce their dad to their friends. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Sarah knelt beside her son, choosing her words carefully. Remember, we've talked about this, sweetie. Not all families are the same. Some have a mommy and a daddy. Some just have a mommy. Some just have a daddy. But now I have Ryan, Leo interrupted with relentless childish logic. Can he come with me on Father's Day? Sarah looked at Ryan with an expression that mixed panic and resignation. The situation had escalated more quickly than she had expected. Leo, Ryan is a special friend, but Father's Day is for... She struggled to find words that wouldn't hurt or confuse him. I can go, Ryan said softly. If you'll let me. Leo jumped for joy. Really? You'll really go? Ryan looked at Sarah, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Yes, I will. Leo's smile lit up the entire afternoon. Later, after Sarah and Leo had left, Ryan stayed alone in the park, reflecting on how his life had completely changed in 1 week. 7 days ago, he was a successful businessman about to marry a suitable woman, following a script he had written for himself. Now he was a newly discovered father trying to figure out how to build a bond with a son he barely knew, while dealing with the guilt of 5 lost years. The phone rang again. Jessica for the 5th time that day. Hello? Finally. Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the barely concealed anger. We need to talk. Come to my apartment now. Jessica, I already explained. Come, now. Jessica's apartment on the Upper East Side was a perfect reflection of her personality. Minimalist, elegant, every object chosen for its aesthetic and functional value. The white walls displayed carefully selected contemporary art. The furniture followed straight lines and neutral colors. It was beautiful, sophisticated, and completely soulless. Jessica was waiting for him in the living room, still wearing the suit she had worn to work on a Saturday. She didn't offer him a drink, didn't smile, didn't pretend it would be a friendly conversation. "Sit." She pointed to the sofa, while she remained standing, clearly establishing a power dynamic. "Let's clear this situation up." "There's nothing to clear up. I already told you." "You've said a lot of things this past week, but none of them make any sense." Jessica began pacing the room like a lawyer before a jury. "First, you impulsively call off our wedding. Then, you say you're going to take responsibility for a child you're not even sure is yours." "I'm sure. Based on what? A resemblance? That means nothing legally. You need a DNA test, documentation, a paternity verification, and even if the child is yours, there are civilized ways to handle the situation without destroying our lives." Ryan stood up. "Our life was based on a lie, Jessica. We were never in love with each other. We were convenient, compatible on paper, but it wasn't real love." "Love?" Jessica laughed with disdain. "Ryan, you're 42 years old. Love is for teenagers. We had something much better. Intellectual compatibility, aligned goals, emotional stability. You're talking as if we were a corporate merger. And weren't we? Two successful professionals joining resources to maximize potential." Jessica moved closer to him, her voice becoming softer and more manipulative. "Think about what you're throwing away. Our legal consulting firm was taking off. We had plans to expand overseas. Are you going to give all that up for some romantic fantasy about fatherhood?" Ryan watched her speak and realized he felt nothing. No attraction, no nostalgia, no regret. Jessica was everything he thought he wanted in a partner. But now he understood he had mistaken admiration for love, convenience for compatibility. "It's not a fantasy, Jessica. It's responsibility. A responsibility you can fulfill by paying child support and visiting the kid on weekends." She placed a hand on his arm. "You don't have to turn your life upside down." "My life was already upside down. I just hadn't realized it." Jessica stepped back, realizing she was losing ground. "And what if she's lying? What if it's a scam? Women do this all the time to rich men." "Sarah's not like that." "Ah, Sarah," Jessica pronounced the name with venom. "The baker who rejected you 5 years ago and now conveniently shows up with a child right when you're about to marry someone else." The accusation provoked an anger Ryan hadn't felt in years. "Be careful, Jessica." "Careful of what? The truth?" "You're being manipulated, Ryan. You're letting a woman from your past destroy our future. Our future was dead long before Sarah showed up. We just weren't honest enough to admit it." Jessica crossed her arms, her body language becoming rigid and defensive. "So that's it? 5 years of a relationship thrown in the trash because of a midlife crisis? That's it?" The silence stretched for long minutes. When Jessica spoke again, her voice had regained the cold, professional tone she used in court. "Very well. I will prepare all the necessary documents to dissolve our legal commitments. The apartment we bought together, the joint investments, the consulting firm. I hope you're aware of the financial implications. You can have the apartment. I'll transfer my share of the company to you. Consider it compensation for the trouble." Jessica studied him with a calculating gaze. "Is that generosity or guilt?" "It's the right thing to do." She gave a short nod. "I'll have the papers drawn up." At the door, Ryan turned one last time. "I'm sorry, Jessica. You deserve someone who truly loves you." "And you think the baker is going to love you?" The question was loaded with bitterness and defiance. "You hurt her once. You humiliated her. You ignored her when she needed you most, and now you show up wanting to play happy family. Wake up, Ryan. Some things can't be fixed." Her words followed him to the elevator, to the car, all the way home. Because Jessica was right about one thing. He had hurt Sarah deeply. He had broken her trust in a brutal and selfish way, and now he was hoping she would allow him into Leo's life based solely on goodwill and paternal responsibility. Maybe he was being naive. Maybe Sarah would never be able to truly forgive him. Maybe the most he could ever achieve was a cordial and distant relationship with his son, mediated by politeness and civility. But for the first time in 5 years, Ryan felt like he was doing the right thing, and that, he discovered, was more important than any guarantee of success, because some things were worth the risk of failure. And Leo, his son, was definitely one of them. Father's Day at school was a milestone Ryan was not prepared for. He arrived at St. Jude's Elementary at 8 in the morning, wearing a suit that cost more than many families' monthly budget, feeling completely out of place among fathers in jeans and t-shirts who chatted naturally about kids' soccer and school grades. Leo saw him through the classroom window and waved enthusiastically, his face beaming with pride. It was the first time he would be introducing a father to his classmates, and the significance of the moment was not lost on Ryan, who felt the weight of responsibility like a rock in his stomach. "This is my dad, Ryan," Leo announced to the class with evident pride, pulling him by the hand to the front of the room. "He has a really big company and rides in a black car with a driver." The other children looked at Ryan with interest, some whispering among themselves. The teacher, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile, greeted him warmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Miller. Leo talks a lot about you." Ryan wondered what exactly Leo had told them about him, considering they had only known each other for 3 weeks. The child had an impressive ability to create fantastic narratives based on fragments of reality. The day's activity involved each father talking about his profession to the children. Ryan watched farmers, teachers, mechanics, and salesmen explain their jobs with simplicity and warmth. When it was his turn, he realized he didn't know how to translate CEO of a holding company into language that 4-year-olds could understand. "I work with numbers," he began hesitantly. "I help companies grow and create jobs for people." A little girl raised her hand. "Like Johnny's dad, who has a bakery." "Something like that," Ryan smiled, realizing he had found a functional analogy. "Except instead of one bakery, I take care of lots of different companies." Leo looked at him with absolute adoration, as if he were some kind of superhero. The feeling was simultaneously gratifying and terrifying. How could he explain to a 4-year-old that the father he was beginning to idolize had spent the last 5 years completely ignoring his existence? During recess, Ryan sat on a bench watching Leo play on the playground. The boy was popular among his peers, charismatic and generous, sharing toys and including shyer children in the games. There was an emotional maturity in him that Ryan recognized as a direct inheritance from Sarah. "Mr. Miller," the teacher's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "May I have a word with you for a moment?" They moved to a more private corner of the yard. "I want you to know how important it was for Leo to have you here today," she began. "He's a lovely child, but he's always had a certain melancholy on previous Father's Days." The guilt hit Ryan like a punch. Did he ask about his father? Not exactly. Leo is very protected by his mother. It's impressive how Sarah has managed to raise such a well-balanced child on her own. But you could tell he felt something was missing, especially when he saw his classmates with their dads. Ryan nodded, unable to speak. "I don't know what the situation is between you," the teacher continued, delicately, "but I hope you can maintain this presence in his life. Leo deserves it." "I'll try." "A child doesn't understand trying, Mr. Miller. A child understands presence or absence." Her words stayed with him on the drive back, where he found Sarah waiting at the door of the bakery with a tense expression. It was almost noon, a busy time, but she had temporarily closed up to talk to him. "How did it go?" she asked as soon as he got out of the car. "Good. Leo was very well behaved, introduced me to his friends." Ryan hesitated. "He called me Dad in front of everyone." Sarah sighed. "I figured that would happen. Children don't understand subtleties." "And you? How do you feel about that?" "Confused." Her honesty surprised him. "Leo is happier than I've seen him in a long time, but he's also more anxious. He asks when you're coming back, if he can call you, if you're going to live with us." "What do you tell him?" that things are complicated and that he needs to be patient. Sarah crossed her arms, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. But patience isn't exactly a child's strong suit. Ryan moved a little closer, respecting her personal space but trying to establish enough intimacy for a frank conversation. Sarah, I know I made terrible mistakes in the past. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness or expect you to trust me again. But I want you to know that this isn't a whim or a fleeting moment of guilt. I've really changed. People don't change overnight, Ryan. It wasn't overnight. It was a 5-year process of emptiness that I didn't have the courage to admit. He sought her eyes. You know my flaws better than anyone. You know I've always been controlling, self-centered, incapable of putting someone else's needs before my own. Sarah nodded without hesitation. But Leo changed that. Not just meeting him, but understanding what I lost. Understanding that for 5 years, you single-handedly raised the most incredible child I've ever met, while I wasted time building a life based on appearances. And your fiancée, Jessica? It's over. For good. Sarah studied him carefully. Because of Leo. Because of me. Because I realized I never truly loved Jessica, and it would be unfair to her to pretend otherwise just to maintain a convenient marriage. And now, what's the plan? The question was loaded with challenge. Sarah knew all too well Ryan's obsession with strategic planning, his need to control variables and predict outcomes. I don't have a plan, he admitted. For the first time in my adult life, I'm living day by day trying to learn how to be a father, how to be a better person. That scares me, Ryan. Why? Because you without a plan usually means chaos, and I can't allow chaos in Leo's life. The observation was fair, and it hurt precisely because of that. Ryan had repeatedly shown that when he lost control of situations, he became destructive and impulsive. Then help me make a plan, he pleaded. Teach me how to do this the right way. Before Sarah could answer, Leo came running out of the school and threw himself into Ryan's arms with full force. Dad, you came to get me. The word Dad, spoken with such naturalness and affection, struck both adults like a bolt of lightning. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, clearly fighting conflicting emotions. Leo, sweetie, you can't just run out of school like that, she chided gently. You have to wait for the teacher to dismiss you. But I saw Ryan and I got so happy. Leo turned to Ryan without letting go of his legs. Can you have dinner with us tonight? Ryan looked at Sarah, who hesitated visibly before nodding. He can, but just for tonight, okay? This can't become a habit. Dinner took place in the small apartment above the bakery, a cozy space decorated with personal items that told the story of Sarah and Leo. Photos from birthdays, children's drawings taped to the refrigerator, shelves filled with kids' books and handwritten recipe notebooks. Ryan felt like an intruder observing the life he had lost, but also like someone discovering for the first time what it truly meant to be home. Leo chattered throughout the meal, talking about school, his friends, the cartoons he watched on TV. Sarah cooked pasta with homemade sauce and a salad, a simple meal that had more flavor than all the sophisticated dinners Ryan was used to. Dad, Leo said suddenly, can you teach me how to drive? Sarah nearly choked on her water. Leo, you're 4 years old. You can't drive. But when I grow up, can you teach me? Ryan felt the weight of the question. Leo was making plans for a future that included his presence, assuming he would be there to teach him important things, to be a male role model, to be a real father. Of course, he promised. When you're old enough, I'll teach you. And can you take me to work so I can see your company? Leo, Sarah began, but Ryan interrupted her. Yes, I can. Whenever you want. Leo smiled radiantly, but Sarah looked worried. After dinner, while Leo was watching cartoons in the living room, she pulled Ryan into the kitchen. You're promising too much, she whispered. Leo is building up expectations that you might not be able to meet. Why wouldn't I be able to? Because you don't know yourself when things get tough. Because you have a history of walking away when relationships demand more than you're willing to give. Sarah's voice was low but firm. I don't want Leo to go through the same disappointment I did. The comparison was brutal and fair. Ryan had proven 5 years ago that he was capable of rejecting people he loved when they became inconvenient or challenging. I won't abandon Leo. It might not be a conscious choice. It could be gradual. Visits that become less frequent. Promises that get postponed. Interest that wanes when the novelty wears off. Sarah washed the dishes with mechanical movements, clearly trying to keep busy to avoid exploding. Leo isn't a business project you can abandon when it stops being profitable. I know that. Do you? Because 5 years ago, you also knew a lot of things about love and commitment until it became too hard for you to handle. Ryan leaned against the sink next to her. What can I do to prove that I've changed? Time, Sarah answered without hesitation. Consistency, real presence, not just in the good moments. And if I prove it? If I show you that I'm here to stay, that I've learned from my mistakes? Sarah stopped washing dishes and faced him. Then we'll talk about what this means for the three of us. The three of us? You, me, and Leo, because if you're going to be his father for real, we're going to have to find a way to coexist that works for everyone. The we sounded like a distant but real possibility. Ryan realized that Sarah wasn't completely closing the door on an eventual reconciliation, but she was setting strict conditions that he would have to meet. Leo, she called out, bath time. Just 5 more minutes, came the reply from the living room. Now, young man. Leo appeared in the kitchen, pouting, but he obeyed without argument. Before following Sarah to the bathroom, he hugged Ryan again. Bye, Dad. Are you coming back tomorrow? If your mum lets me. Of course she'll let you, Leo said with absolute conviction. She likes you, I can see it in her eyes. The innocent observation created an awkward silence between the adults. Sarah looked away, clearly unsure how to respond. Come on, Leo, bath. When they disappeared down the hall, Ryan was left alone in the kitchen, processing the complexity of the situation. In 3 weeks, he had gone from a man about to marry a woman he didn't love to a newly discovered father trying to win back the trust of the woman he had rejected years ago. But for the first time in a long time, he felt he was on the right path. Even without guarantees, without strategic plans, even facing the possibility of rejection and failure. Leo came running back, in his pajamas, his hair wet and a bright smile on his face. Dad, can you tell me a story before I go to sleep? Sarah appeared behind him, clearly trying to decide if she should intervene. Does your mom always tell you stories? Ryan asked. Every night. She makes up stories about brave princes and nice dragons. Ryan looked at Sarah, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Then let's make up a story together. You, me, and your mom. And for the first time in 5 years, the three of them sat on the sofa like something that vaguely resembled a family, creating a story about a prince who had lost his way home, but finally found what truly mattered. Leo fell asleep between them, his face serene and trusting. Sarah and Ryan remained still for a long time, watching the calm breathing of the child who had changed both their lives in ways they were still learning to understand. He's perfect, Ryan whispered. He's ours, Sarah replied, and for the first time she used the word ours to include him in the equation. It was a small beginning, but it was a beginning. 6 months after their first meeting in the park, Ryan had become a constant presence in Leo's life. Not an occasional visitor or a weekend dad, but a real father figure who actively participated in the child's routine. He picked Leo up from school 3 times a week, helped with homework, attended all the parent-teacher conferences, and had even learned to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes for Saturday morning breakfasts. The transformation hadn't been easy or immediate. Ryan had to unlearn 2 decades of self-centered behavior and develop skills he never knew he would need. Patience when Leo threw a tantrum in the supermarket, creativity to invent, educational games, sensitivity to notice when the child was sad or worried about something at school. But the most profound change had occurred in ways he hadn't expected. Ryan had drastically reduced his work hours, delegating responsibilities he once considered non-negotiable. He discovered that he didn't need to control every detail of every business operation to maintain success. In fact, His partial absence had made his team more independent and efficient. As surprising as it was, he was happier working less and living more. Sarah observed these changes with an initial caution that gradually turned into genuine admiration. The man, who visited Leo every day, was fundamentally different from the one she had known 5 years ago. Ryan had developed an infinite patience with the child, an ability to listen without judgment, and a humility she had never imagined possible. But the real test came on a rainy Tuesday in August, when Leo woke up with a high fever and had to be taken to the hospital. Sarah was alone at the bakery when the school called to say that Leo was sick and needed to be picked up immediately. She closed everything in a hurry and rushed to the school, her heart pounding with the panic only mothers understand. She found Leo pale and trembling in the teacher's arms, burning with fever. At the hospital, while they waited for the pediatrician, Sarah called Ryan without a second thought. "Sarah? Is something wrong?" His voice conveyed immediate concern. "Leo's at the hospital. He has a very high fever, and they're trying to figure out what it is." "Where are you?" "Mount Sinai, the pediatric emergency room." "I'm on my way." Ryan showed up 20 minutes later, still wearing the suit from an important meeting he had abandoned midway. He found Leo asleep on a gurney, Sarah holding his small hand with a heart-wrenching expression of worry. "How is he?" "His fever is almost 104. It could be a bad virus or something more serious." Sarah didn't take her eyes off Leo. "They're going to run some tests." Ryan sat on the other side of the gurney and gently touched Leo's hot forehead. The child opened his eyes, still drowsy from the medication. "Dad, you came?" "Of course I came. I wasn't going to leave my boy alone." Leo smiled faintly and closed his eyes again. Ryan stayed there holding the child's other hand, sharing with Sarah the silent vigil that only parents understand. It was 4 hours of anxiety, tests, medication, and waiting. When the pediatrician finally confirmed it was just a virus and that Leo would be fine, Sarah collapsed into Ryan's arms, sobbing with relief. He held her tenderly, feeling that something fundamental had changed between them. For 4 hours, they had simply been two parents worried about their son, without barriers, without resentment, united only by the unconditional love they felt for Leo. "Thank you for coming," Sarah whispered when they separated. "You don't have to. Thank me. This is where I belong." And for the first time, she truly believed it was. Leo was on bed rest for a week, and Ryan cancelled all his business trips to help care for him. He set himself up on the sofa in Sarah's apartment, keeping Leo company during the day while she worked in the bakery downstairs. It was 7 days of domestic life that worked with surprising naturalness. Ryan prepared light meals for Leo, watched cartoons without complaining, and read stories with different voices for each character. At night, when Sarah came up to have dinner with them, she would find father and son inventing games or putting together puzzles on the living room floor. "You know," Sarah said one Thursday evening after Leo had fallen asleep, "you're a better father than I expected." Ryan was washing dishes, an activity he had strangely come to find relaxing. "Thanks, I think. That wasn't a backhanded compliment. It's a real one." Sarah came over and started drying the dishes. "Leo adores you. And you seem genuinely happy taking care of him." "I am. Happier than I've been in my entire adult life." Sarah stopped drying the plate and looked at him directly. "And with me? How do you feel about me?" The question hung in the air, charged with expectation. Ryan turned off the faucet and turned to face her. "With you, I feel at home. For the first time in 5 years, I feel like I'm where I belong. Ryan, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. I know I hurt you in an unforgivable way. But I need you to know that these last 6 months have been the best of my life, not just because of Leo, but because I've had the chance to be around you again, to see the person you've become." Sarah leaned against the sink, clearly fighting conflicting emotions. "You hurt me a lot," she said simply. "When I needed support the most, you rejected me. When I tried to share the most important news of my life with you, you chose to believe your own wounded pride. I know. and I'll carry that guilt forever. But, Sarah hesitated. Watching you with Leo, seeing how you've changed, how dedicated you are to him. It's hard to hold a grudge against someone who loves my son the way you do. Ryan moved a little closer. And you? Do you feel anything for me besides respect for the father I've become? The question was risky. Sarah could easily say no, that she could separate the father from the man, that her gratitude didn't extend to romantic feelings. Instead, she gently touched his face. I feel a lot more than I should, she admitted, and that scares me. Why? Because 5 years ago, I loved you completely, and you destroyed that love when I needed it most. I don't know if I'm strong enough to take that risk again. Ryan covered her hand with his. What if I promise to never let you down again? Promises are easy to make, Ryan. It's keeping them that's hard. Then let me prove it. Not with words, but with actions, with time, with presence. Sarah studied him for a long moment. And what if it doesn't work out? What if we find out that what we feel is just mutual gratitude and not real love? Then at least we tried. At least we gave ourselves an honest chance to find out what could be. The kiss happened naturally, unhurried, filled with 5 years of longing and 6 months of careful rebuilding. It was different from the kisses they had shared in the past, less urgent, more mature, tempered by the experience of loss and reunion. When they pulled apart, Sarah smiled for the first time since Ryan had reappeared in her life. Let's take it slow, she said, for Leo and for us. At your pace, Ryan agreed. I've learned to be patient. The relationship that developed in the following weeks was built on completely different foundations than the first time. Ryan no longer tried to mold her into what he thought she should. Sarah no longer made herself small to accommodate his ego. They were two mature adults who had learned through pain and separation to value each other's individuality. Leo watched it all with evident satisfaction. His childish prayers for a complete family were being answered in an organic and natural way. It became official on a sunny Saturday in October when Ryan showed up at the bakery with a simple bouquet of flowers and a ring that didn't cost a fortune but had been chosen with immense care. Sarah Davis, he knelt in front of the counter, not caring about the curious customers who stopped to watch. Will you marry me? Not for convenience or strategy, but because we've built something real and true together. Leo clapped enthusiastically before Sarah could even answer. Say yes, Mommy. Then we can be a real family. Sarah laughed through her tears, looking at the man kneeling before her. The same man who had rejected her 5 years ago, but who had now returned, transformed, humble, willing to grow alongside her. Yes, she said simply. Yes to everything. The wedding took place 6 months later, in a small intimate ceremony at the bakery itself. Sarah wore a simple dress that highlighted her natural beauty, and Ryan wore an elegant but not ostentatious suit. Leo was the ring bearer, serious in his responsibility of carrying the rings. The officiant who married them commented during the ceremony that he had rarely witnessed a couple who looked at each other with so much genuine love and mutual respect. It wasn't teenage passion or superficial attraction, but a mature love built on real knowledge, acceptance, and a commitment tested by adversity. During their vows, Ryan spoke about second chances and the importance of never stopping growing as a person. Sarah mentioned forgiveness and the courage it takes to love again after being hurt. Leo, who listened to everything with solemn attention, declared during the reception that he was now sure that God had answered all his prayers at once. 2 years later, they bought a house in Greenwich Village with a large yard where Leo could play with the golden retriever he had finally gotten as a gift. Ryan had sold most of his companies and kept only the ones that truly interested him, prioritizing time with his family over accumulating wealth. Sarah had expanded the bakery and started teaching cooking classes for children on the weekends. Ryan often helped her, discovering an infinite patience for teaching little chefs how to crack eggs without making a mess and how to measure ingredients with precision. Leo grew up knowing exactly what unconditional love was. He had 2 parents who respected each other, supported each other, and never missed an opportunity to show affection for one another and for him. One Sunday afternoon, while Leo was playing in the yard with the dog, Sarah and Ryan sat on the porch, watching the everyday scene that represented everything they had achieved, together. "You know what's most incredible?" Sarah commented, her head resting on his shoulder. "What?" "Leo will never know the version of you that I knew 7 years ago. To him, you've always been the present, caring father who puts his family first." Ryan squeezed her hand. "And I hope I always will be." "You will, because now you know what really matters." Leo ran up to them, sweaty and smiling, the dog barking happily behind him. "Dad, Mom, want to play soccer with me?" Ryan stood up immediately. "Of course, but I'm warning you, your mom is terrible in goal." "Hey," Sarah protested, laughing. "I've gotten much better." The three of them ran into the yard, where they spent the rest of the afternoon playing soccer, having a picnic on the grass, and creating memories that Leo would carry with him forever. At the end of the day, when Leo was already asleep and they were cleaning up the kitchen together, Ryan stopped what he was doing and simply watched Sarah putting away the dinner plates. "What is it?" she asked, noticing his gaze. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, about how I almost lost all of this, because of pride and stupidity." Sarah walked over and kissed his cheek. "But you didn't lose it. You found your way back." "We found it," Ryan corrected. "You had to be brave enough to give me a second chance." "It was worth it," Sarah smiled. "Completely." That night, lying in the bed of the house that was genuinely theirs, listening to Leo's quiet breathing in the next room, Ryan finally understood what true success meant. It wasn't about money in the bank or professional recognition. It was about having people you loved waiting for you at home every day. It was about being needed, valued, loved for who you really were, not for what you owned. It was about getting a second chance and being wise enough not to waste it. Sarah fell asleep in his arms, confident and happy. Leo dreamed in the next room of adventures that always included the two parents who loved him unconditionally. And Ryan, for the first time in his 45 years, fell asleep with the absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly the right people, living exactly the life that was worth living. Some stories end with guaranteed happy endings. Others end with the wisdom of knowing that happiness is a daily construction, made of right choices, genuine forgiveness, and a love that grows over time. The story of Ryan, Sarah, and Leo was definitely the second kind, and for that very reason it was infinitely more valuable and true.